Greetings! I'm a little excited today because I'm setting up a brand new altar in my home, and I thought it would be fun if you had a chance to see what my process is when I set up an altar. You probably know, if you've seen any of my videos in the past, that we have just finished a lot of remodeling in our home and been moving a lot of furniture around and repurposing some of our rooms, redefining the use of our rooms. And one of the outcomes of our remodeling is the opportunity we have now to have an altar, a full-time set-up altar in our bedroom. So I thought it would be fun to discuss a little bit with you what kind of considerations I take into account when I am setting up a new altar. Okay, so please forgive my glasses. They're reading glasses. They probably make me look quite zonky, but I want to be sure to see what it is I'm doing here. Okay, first of all, some of the considerations that I take into account. Of course, the most obvious is location. We all consider privacy issues when we're setting up an altar. Whether or not we want to share our altar space, something that is very private, something we're doing privately with our public, with our friends and with our family. But there are other considerations to take into account as well when you set up an altar. For instance, what are you going to be using the altar for? Will you be doing spell work? Will you be doing ritual? If that is the case, you need to consider your environment. I don't want to do money spells or prosperity spells for my business in my bedroom, which is one of the reasons that I do have this bedroom altar. Personal issues, things that are personal to my husband and I, having to do with relationship or having to do with our personal health or personal lives outside of our business or outside of our friends, family, etc. We want an altar to address those issues. Okay, so it would not be cool to do business related spell work in here, of course, but that is not the only thing to consider with a location. What kind of environment, if you are going to do spell work, what is the environment around your altar? If it's very busy, very noisy, very distracting, is that the best environment for a spell that you set and see to finish? You know, you light candles, you do your spell work, and then you see to finish. Do you want that to be in a very busy, active place of your home, or do you want that to be in a more private area? We decided to have this altar in our bedroom. So where in the bedroom should the altar be placed? Well, in my bedroom I have 2 walls to choose from. I have, of course, 4 walls like we all do, but 2 of them were not available. But I had 2 walls behind me here, and both walls have a window in the wall. My wall to my left the window there overlooks a very busy cul-de-sac. There are cars coming and going, there are people coming and going, there's all kind of noise. There are chickens from the yard, in the front yard, from the neighbors' chickens. A lot of activity. So that would maybe be distracting if I were to have my altar. Maybe it would be distracting for me. It also may be not so private if I wanted to do ritual at my altar. This wall to my right, the wall that I chose, has a window that looks out onto a private garden in my yard. Look out my window and you see my garden. Nobody can see me, and it's a very nice calming effect. But notice that I say that I am choosing to put the altar on the wall, not under the window. I'm going to put it on the wall beside the window, and there are several reasons for that. Number 1 reason, perhaps, cats. If you have cats, I don't probably have to explain. But if you do not have cats, let me tell you, cats will be on your altar if you have an altar. Cats will be on whatever you have. That's what cats do. And there might not be a problem with having cats on your altar. For you, might not be a big deal. For me, they're welcome sometimes. I have a few cats who I even consider to be perhaps familiars. They sometimes assist me with my magic. But I don't want my cats, who love to sit in this window to watch the birds in the lemon tree right outside the window, I don't want to turn my altar into kitty bleachers. Okay? I don't want them to be lined up on that altar day and night, interfering with whatever is going on. So I chose to put my altar beside. If they're on it, they will be incidentally on it and they will move on. Okay. So I do recognize, therefore, that this is shared space. My bedroom is shared. It's not private as I considered. It is shared, and I take that into consideration. Who is sharing the space? Of course, my husband is, but this is his altar as well. But my cats will share the space. My dog will share the space. Occasionally, my family comes and goes through my bedroom. That's fine. They're welcome in here. But it is still in and out of the way. It's in a far wall, in a corner, rather private. No one's going to interfere with it. They don't pass by it to get to another part of the house. Okay. Which could be very interesting. Anyway, the cat people are going to consider it theirs. I can't help it. The next thing to consider when putting up an altar for me is service area. How much service area do I actually need? I have an altar in my business, in our home office, which is, we run a business, and it's at the end of a cupboard. On the top of a cupboard, perhaps only 16 inches square. That is perfectly adequate for what we need it for. It is a single-use altar. That's our prosperity altar that we visit each day. No spells are done on there, no rituals are done on there. But the altar that is going to be in my bedroom is going to be multi-purpose. We are going to do ritual, we are going to set spells on here, we are going to do it for a few things. We're also going to incorporate in this space our ancestor altar, which I'll get you in just a few minutes. Okay. So I'm going to step away from in front of the camera, and I'm going to try to go behind the camera so I can show you a little bit of what I'm using to set on my altar. If you just give me a minute. Okay, here we are back again. And I'll just step back a little bit so that you can see. If you have seen any of my remodeling videos, you might recognize this table. This is the table that my husband and my father made for me one Thanksgiving, which was in my kitchen for years and years. And now we have moved it into our bedroom to use for our altar space. I love it for this because it has a lot of storage. It has these drawers in the front, which are really good for things in here. And it has a lot of surface area, which is very good. Okay, I'm adding to that this little shelf unit that my husband built that I used to keep some of my more exotic spices in it that I used for my medieval cooking, and now I'm using it for my altar. It has these little drawers, which are very cool little drawers. Very cool. Okay, so I'll talk about that in just a minute. So when we talk about this altar, a little bit bigger space. I'm really big into storage because I really like to keep what I need close by when I'm doing, when I have an altar. I love the idea of using a table made by the hands of my husband and my father as an altar. I think if you saw my last video that I did on some of my magical tools, it means a lot to me to have things that are made, things that are homemade, or things that I have that have special meaning to me. That adds a depth to the magical tools. And also the storage that I just pointed out is also very valuable. I like to keep most of what I need close by. I don't like to take the time to gather things from all over the house every time I want to use the altar. There are times when we set up a temporary altar, usually by our fireplace in our kitchen, now our kitchen living room area, but it's usually outside when we set up a temporary altar. And when we do that, we keep the items that we use for those in some trunks. There's a trunk there on the floor, and another trunk, if I can find it, there under the table. There you see it. Those kind of things have what we need to set up temporary altars. So we just take the trunk and go find a surface. Okay, but what kind of things do we want to store next to this altar? Something that's going to be permanent. What do I always want to keep? Of course, I keep candles, and I have candles. Pillars I store elsewhere because I only use a pillar candle as my working candle, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. But I do have some tapers, and I'll show you that. This is sort of interesting. I have, if I can even see it, these are drawers that I used to, over here in the corner of the room. They used to be part of an old sewing cabinet, and now I have repurposed the drawers. And I have candles. They're perfect for candles, perfect. And also for, there's tea lights, which I do use. A lot of tea lights, we do all do. And here's some chime candles, small chime candles that we use for, whoops, very bad camera work. We use these for, there we go, chime candles. They're smaller, they're perfect for bells because they are small. I've red, black, and white. And also, of course, the charcoal disc, which I'll talk about in a minute. But anyway, this is perfect. This also gives me another surface on this table, which you'll see a little later, probably in another video, what I do with that. This is going to be sort of an extension of this main altar here, and a bedroom is going to be a bit more of a healing altar, which I'll show you when we get that set up. But anyway, here we are back again on the altar. I like to keep the candles close by, so I use tapers for mostly my God and Goddess candles. I set a pillar candle. I just use one for a long, long time till it's done. Chime candles for spell work, and the tea lights, of course. And then I also keep here in my drawers, I have places in here, matches. I keep matches. Let me stand up. Matches. These are resins that I use a lot. Here's dragon's blood, things that I use quite often, frankincense, copal. Here's a Santo Paulo, which I use that a lot. Not a lot, but I use it. I love the smell of it. It's lovely. Also, things that I use quite... Oh, this is good. Lavender, of course. I use a lot of lavender. And because it's my bedroom, but I use this a lot because my husband and I both do most of our practice together. I use rose quartz crystals. I call rose quartz into... I use them a lot. So I have... There's just a bag of small ones. I haven't taken into service yet, but I will. And of course, sage. I do grow my own sage, and I use it to smudge. Right now I'm just smudging the, trying to smudge a little bit in the altar. Clear the air. So anyway, so things that I'm going to be using quite often, I will keep here beside my altar. I do use, and I'm gonna put them out on the table. So I'm going to introduce some of the other things as I place them. I'm going to try to dress this altar in front of you. See if it works. So the first thing I need to talk about is altar cloth, because here you see my table is bare, and we usually use an altar cloth, and I'd like to talk to you about that a little bit further. Exactly why do we use altar cloths? Most people would say, if you would ask them, the popular answer would be, we use altar cloths to protect our altar. Because it's always dripping candles, and we use a lot of wax and oils and stuff like that. So we use an altar cloth to protect our surface. But I think that's a little odd kind of an answer. It's not my answer. It might be a very good answer for some. But the reason it's not my answer is because some of my altar cloths are just beautiful, and it's much easier to clean candle wax off a table than it is to clean off an altar cloth. But for me, my table is an important tool in itself. Every nick or burn or stain that is in my table or in my surface is it's like another ring appearing on a growing tree. The power of my magic grows, as does the wisdom of my tools. That's just a really important part of it to me. So, if you're familiar with palmistry, you know that the lines in your hand will actually change with your life experiences. So, for me, the potency of my magical tools changes. The surface of my altar top, if I have an old table, has changed some of the power for my tools. It has increased power with my use, all the uses that I have done. So then again, why are we back to using an altar cloth? Well, many of these cloths are beautiful scarves, they're shawls, they're throws, whatever. And I think they're wonderful. But to me, an altar cloth makes the difference between an ordinary table. This was an ordinary table. This was an ordinary table in my kitchen. I want it to be an altar, so it needs to have an altar cloth. Because the altar cloth elevates the ordinary surface, which was my kitchen table, or a chest of drawers in my office, or even a stone or a patch of grass out in the field somewhere. It elevates, by putting an altar cloth on there, it elevates that ordinary surface to a sacred space. I'm back, and here you can see I've added an altar cloth to my altar. This altar I probably will just change out 2 times. Have 2 different cloths, I'm not sure. I don't change my altar cloths every season. Some people do. I tend to, sometimes I leave the cloth on always. Sometimes I have a different cloth for the light and dark of the year, which is probably going to be the case in here. And sometimes I have special altar cloths for special Sabbats. But in here, this is a nice altar cloth that I use. Another consideration that I use in building my altar is height consideration. I don't like the feeling of looking down on an altar all the time. I like to feel like I'm being drawn into the space. So I like to have things at varying heights, which is why I added this little shelf in the background for one. And I'm also adding, and of course I added over here, now you can see, you get a little perspective, the shelf unit, the little drawers that I had from my sewing machine with a surface. So I have that area that can be called into service for me as another space. But I also have, I've gone up here, and these shelves above are meant to be, right now, they're just photographs, but it looks like photographs. But actually, this is going to be my ancestor altar in the future, above my main altar here. And I love this. I have photographs, and I will go into detail with you a little bit later, probably when we get to, I usually put out, I intend to put my ancestor altar probably sometime after Mabon, but coming into Samhain. I will sometime dress it in there. But anyway, these are just right now photographs, but in this box here, this little box here on the shelf, there are personal items that tie me to my ancestors, and those will come out, and this will be all decorated. So for now, it's just a shelf, but even with that shelf there, it gives me the feeling that I'm being drawn into the space rather than just looking down on a space. And you'll see that as I add more things, you'll see what I'm talking about. Let's see. Oh, okay. One thing, the first thing that I have to add onto my altar, now that we're getting to it, is a working candle. And I don't know how many of you use a working candle, but I use a pillar candle for that. And I've already inscribed, I usually inscribe something. I have a, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Maybe. For me, I use this little pottery tool. Can you see that little pottery tool? To inscribe on my candle. I'm sure you cannot see it. It's kind of private. But anyway, I inscribe on the candle. I dedicate what I call a working candle on my major altars for the purpose. I call them a working candle because that is the first candle that I light. First of all, it's dedicated, it's put into service for the altar. But secondly, it is the first candle that I light and the last candle to be extinguished on my altar. I light the candle to, and then other candles are lit from the flame of this candle. And then, so it works for me. It's a working flame, a working candle. And any candles, like my God or Goddess candle, any spell candles, whatever. Any other kind of things that I light come from that flame. So it's very much a working tool for me. Only 2 of my permanent altars in my house have working candles on them right now. If we were to set up a temporary altar for a ritual like outside, we would just use something we call an altar candle. We would have something that we establish as an altar candle for that ritual. But in this case, these candles, these 2 candles that I have on these 2 altars that I speak of, permanent altars I speak of, are indeed working candles. They work for me. I call them into service for many things. Okay. So other things that, so now I have a candle. Not very elaborate, not very beautiful is it, my altar yet, but it will be. Remember, building an altar is a process. It's something that happens over time. You cannot authentically, in my opinion, put up an altar. I know people try to do that, and I think that's, for them, it probably works very well. For me, it does not. It's not so authentic. It has to develop over time. It has to feel like it has some kind of substance to it, something, it grows. To me, an altar is a living thing that you feed, that you maintain, and as you take care of your altar, it takes care of you. So anyway, there's much more to my that's going to happen, but right now we're just talking about the basics. So there's my working candle. Now I have a few things that I talked in the last video of, I like to call tools into service, things that I have. But for this altar, since this was brand new and we did not have it in the past, we did purchase a few things. And one of the things we purchased was this beautiful statue of Pan. And I'll put him right there. I'll do another video perhaps in the future, talk about some of the deities that we do honor in our home, Pan, and I will also talk in the future a little more about Pan and why he's important to us. He's important to us in this room. Let's put it to you that way. I think even though we are not Wiccan, I think we tend to honor the god and goddess of Wicca, if that makes sense. I think I've heard that phrase used before, and that seems to make sense to me, because it is a god and goddess to us in any form sometimes. So we don't tend to have specific deities too much that we work with. We generally god and goddess, of course we do, as I mentioned. We work with Bridge. We call Bridge, it's Bridget in the parlor. And here we have Pan, which is very important to us. So anyway, he was glorious, and we bought him just for this space. The other thing that I bought for this space only, brand new, are these candles, God and Goddess candles, which I would like to show you. They're here. So let me see. Here's one. Here's the God candle. And I know you have seen them. This is the God candle holder that we bought. And this is the Goddess candle that we bought. And I will there's a purpose for it. On this altar, as in the altar in the parlor, we like to have something to represent the turning of the wheel. You probably know that we live in Southern California, and sometimes our seasons seem to resemble summer, cold summer, and fire. So we like to have some visual reminders of the turnings of the wheel of the year. And these candle holders, which I know you have seen, they're really great because the God candle here, I don't know if you can see it, my camera's not too great, but he represents the duality of the horn god, which is the Holly King and the Oak King. You switch them around from one to another. Very lovely. And then, of course, the triple goddess on the goddess statue representing the maiden, mother, and crone. So here we have the maiden and the mother. Wait, did you see that? The maiden, the mother, and the crone. And I love those for this room. So I'm going to stop just a minute and show you where I'm going to put these. Let me try to set them up a little bit. Okay. I've finished setting up some of my basic items, just showing you a little bit what I have here. As you can see, I've added a snuffer. I don't blow out my candles. There was a very interesting discussion about whether or not you blow out your candles on one of the Facebook groups. And I think I really liked it. One of the comments somebody made, when you're doing certain kind of spell work, to add your breath into the spell when you blow it out is sort of a neat idea. But I was taught, I don't know where I learned, I don't know why I was taught it, to never really blow out candles. So I really do not, as a rule. Anyway, I have a snuffer. For incense burner, as you can see here, I use a treacle disc. Always, I have a little cauldron here, and that's usually what I use in sand, and I do that on all my altars. I tend to make incense seasonally. When I celebrate a Sabbath, I make, like for instance, we just had Lammas, and I made an incense blend for Lammas, specifically for Lammas. And I use that for that ritual and for anything. And I use it up. I use it up until we get to the next Sabbath. It's not that I won't add, I do other incenses if I'm doing some kind of specific spell or something that needs other kind of incense. I will use it. But it's just my basic generic incense on my altar through that season. For this purpose of this altar, I made a different blend, and and if I can do that with my left hand, I'm not sure. I'm using a teacup that was my mother's teacup without a saucer. So you can put it in anything. Like I said, I like to have tools. This was one of her cups, little china cups. The saucer broke, and we're going to get rid of the cup. And I thought, oh no, what a lovely little cup. Would make lovely for the incense. And I love having it in here, particularly when I do have the ancestor altar above. Anyway, so this incense will be used on this altar for right now, for the beginnings of this altar. But eventually it'll probably have a seasonal blend like the other one. And then, here, I have a patent under this candle, the working candle. This patent that we did purchase this for this space. I don't normally do that, but we saw it and we thought, oh, that'll go so lovely in our bedroom. It'll be so appropriate. And it's a nice heavy ceramic stoneware one. And it gave us hope that the project would get to this finish, the finish line, when it was a project that never seemed to finish. So anyway, I used that. So right now it has that salt. I always have salt on the altar, always. And sea salt, I use sea salt exclusively. And this is a little ceramic pinch pot that we made. It was made for us. So we have that. And then this I'm using for our instead of a chalice, I'm using a ceramic cup that I made on my kick wheel. I have a medieval kick wheel, which makes very crude pottery. But anyway, I made that. So I'm going to be using that as in here for at least the time being for our chalice. So, and I also have two other interesting things that I always add. First of all, I have elemental candles here in the back. As you can see, one representing the different colors corresponding to the earth, the air, the fire, and the water, calling the directional candles. And I don't always use them, but they're close at hand if I need to. And another thing that I use quite often is hanging here. I don't know if you can see it. I guess you can. I like to use bells. I like to hang bells either on my cupboards, my witch's cupboards, or I'll show you. I'll show you the getup that I have on the altar. I mean the cupboard I have an altar out on my sunroom. I like to put protection up for some of my things. Not that, I like to share my things, but I don't like people sticking their noses into things that don't concern them. And a lot of my space is public. I have a lot of people coming through my house all the time. And so sometimes it's a little bit of protection. And again, this is something that speaks to the cats visiting my altar, and it also speaks to I love bells. I'm a very big believer in feng shui and energy that must move, and so I love, even though these are very delicate, you probably can't even hear it on here, but there is a little tinkling to them. And of course the element of the crescent moon, which is very important to me. So anyway, that's just another little cool thing. Okay, the very last thing I will cut here, is a place to put your Book of Shadows. And I do not leave, of course, my Book of Shadows out. It is normally hidden away in one of my cupboards. This is one of them. We have a few of them, but this is one. This is my first, actually, Book of Shadows. But we have it, here we have it on an old, of course, music stand, as you can see. There we go. It's a very neat thing. And we use that, of course, if we have a ritual. We like to have the Book of Shadows where we can see it, of course, open. So that's sort of the last thing that I have in my altar. So I can step back, if I could step back, and give you a little bit of a perspective. Let me try to stack back a little bit, because I would like you to sort of see, there we go, the corner of my room. And here we have the table. There's my bed. Okay. So there's the table and the trunks for storage. Here's the window. Oh, who's that? It's a cat. Hello. Not too happy. And anyway, here, as you can see, the altar, we're sort of drawn into the space. And there's the ancestors on the wall waiting to be dressed. Kind of neat. It's just the very basics, the very bare basics. Nothing fancy yet. Like I said before, it is a living, your altar is a living thing, and it will grow with you. Don't be in a big hurry to put everything out at first. Let it grow. Feel it. Feel the mood of it. So as I step forward into it, this is what I really love. I don't feel, and I'm standing, I don't feel like I'm looking just down on it. It goes up, 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 up. So I'm sort of drawn into the space. Sort of drawn into the space a little bit. And of course, lots more things are going to happen. Lots more things, because we love our things. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. I apologize for my horrible camera angles. I don't know what I'm doing. It was a little difficult for me to try to figure out how to do this. But I can focus on Pan because I think he's glorious. And I'd love to see your altar spaces. Love it, love it. So, anyway, maybe this was interesting for you. Maybe it was not. Anyway, I'd love to see you respond, if you can, to the space, to show me some of your altar spaces. What is your criteria for setting up an altar? That's really what I'm interested in. We can all go buy a book and see what it is. But for me, it's very personal. So anyway, there I am. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching my channel. I am Rebecca, and I wish you blessings.